the weakness in the Yamaha SLG silent guitars that can kill it, and how to fix it. And this weakness is in both the nylon strung and the steel strung versions of the guitar. I initially bought and reviewed the nylon strung and the steel strung versions of this guitar in 2020. However, since then I've done an additional video on how to lower the action, and now this is a follow-up with other things I've found about the guitar since I've been using it over the last 4 years. Before I get on to the update of the review, firstly I'll tell you the major problem I've found and how to sort it. And the problem is the battery housing. I did have my suspicions this problem might arise when I first bought the guitar because the battery compartment feels quite flimsy. However, I thought the clip would break, which hasn't happened. But what did happen is, one of the contacts on one of the guitars has become really corroded. And strangely, it was already corroded when I'd bought the guitar from brand new. But it's got a lot worse in a very short period of time. So it no longer makes good contact when you put the batteries in. And the battery compartment having problems is a really common problem on the SLG200s. And obviously, if you can't put batteries in it, you have to rely on the power supply. The good news is, it's really easy to fix and the parts are easily available, which isn't true for all SLG200 parts. On one of my SLGs, I snapped a tuning peg, and I contacted Yamaha and did multiple searches of the internet, and I just couldn't get one anywhere. Eventually, I was just lucky enough that one came up second hand on eBay. But if it wasn't for that, I would have had real problems getting the parts I needed to repair it. But this isn't a problem with the battery housing, as long as you know what you're looking for. And what you need to do is go to Google and search Yamaha WS668000, and you should be able to find it in a lot of good music shops and also directly from China. Here in the UK, I bought mine from GAC, which is Guitars and Keyboards, but it's available on lots of other stores as well. The bad news is that it's quite expensive, at between £9 and £15. However, when you balance this up against the value of the guitar, it's well worth replacing it. The replacement process isn't difficult, so here's how you replace the battery compartment on a Yamaha SLG200. The battery holder arrives as a complete unit. So the first thing you need to do is remove the insert where the batteries are placed. And you want to remove the batteries out of your guitar as well. At this point, it's a good idea to check that both inserts are the same. And if you want to save yourself a lot of work, you could even try placing the batteries in the new insert and pushing this into the guitar to see if it'll work this way before you have to do anything else. But if you still have to replace the whole battery holder, this isn't a problem because it's quite easy. In order that I can get the camera in so you can see what I'm doing, I'm going to remove the rest off the guitar. But you don't really need to do this if you don't want to. All the bits you need to get at are on the back of the guitar, so it's easy to get at them whilst the rest is still in place. Looking at the back of the guitar then, you'll notice there's 4 screws, one in either corner, and these are what we need to remove. So we'll take those 4 screws out. This bit's been sped up so you don't get too bored. Obviously, put the screws somewhere safe so you don't lose them, or so they don't get underneath the guitar and end up scratching it. Once you've taken the 4 screws out, you can lift away the back very carefully and very slowly. You'll find there's two wires connecting the back to the guitar itself, and they've got plenty of play, so you can turn the back over so you can see what you need to see. But you don't want to pull on these wires. You can now see the back of the battery case, and you can see the clip that's holding it in place, but also the plug where the wires from the battery housing connect to the guitar. To remove the battery housing, you want to push down on the top clip and bend the housing slightly so that it jams in the opening so it's open. And then you want to reach underneath the battery housing with a screwdriver or some other long implement so you can push on the clip on the other side. This might take a little bit of fidgeting, but eventually it'll clip out and the whole housing will come loose. When this happens, you want to unplug the wire to the guitar, and then you can slide the whole of the battery housing out. The plug can be quite tight, so you might need to work it for a bit before it comes out, or you might even need to use some pliers. But try to avoid pulling on the wires, because if you want to keep the battery housing, you don't want to damage the connections. Once the plug's disconnected, you can simply pull out the battery housing. Before we put the guitar back together, there's just one last step. Around the housing is a rubber gasket that's just there to stop it from rattling against the case. So you need to take that off the old housing and put it on the new housing, as one of these doesn't come with the battery housing replacement. Once you've fitted the rubber gasket, you're ready to put the whole guitar back together again. Before you try to push the new battery housing into place, make sure it's the right way round, as it'll only go in one way. And the clip needs to be facing the controls. Then you can just slide it in until it clicks, making sure you don't get the wire caught up with anything. Now you can connect the new battery holder to the guitar, and the plug will only go in one way, so don't force it, but it will take a little bit of pressure as they're quite tight. When you've plugged it all in, tidy up the wires and put them out of the way so they don't get caught or pinched when you put the back on. Before putting the guitar back together, it's well worth making sure that the repair has worked. So put the batteries in the guitar and check to see if it comes on. And if it does, you know it's working. You can now put the guitar back together. I've put on the tuner because the lights are brighter and I'm not sure if the camera's picking up on the power light. All you've got to do now is place the back on and screw it into place. However, you do have to watch one thing. Make sure the wires are all properly tucked away so they don't get pinched between the back and the guitar, because you could end up with broken wires. When I put the screws back in, I always start them off by hand to make sure they're properly aligned. And with a guitar like this, you should never over tighten the screws. Just make sure they just pinch down. Otherwise you could potentially end up cracking the plastic back. I'll just give the guitar one final check. Then I'll put the rest back on and give it a well-deserved polish. Just as a matter of interest, the contacts on the old battery container are really strange. The ones in the box that fit in the guitar are perfect, but the one in the slider that holds the batteries is completely corroded or oxidized. And the way it's oxidized doesn't make very much sense, as it's even oxidized where it's buried in the plastic, so it shouldn't have. I'd love to know if anyone else has had this problem, so if you've had this issue, tell me about it down below in the comments. Right, I'll just do a very brief 4 years later review update. If you didn't see the original reviews, I'll put a link to them down below in the description in case you want to watch them. Over the last 4 years, I've used both these guitars at least weekly, and I've gone through multiple sets of strings, multiple sets of batteries, and they've done multiple recordings, and I've honestly been really pleased with them. When I first played the steel strung guitar, I wasn't that impressed with the sound, especially when everyone on the internet who reviewed them was raving about how good the sound was. However, I've found the right settings on my equipment for the guitar now, and I must admit, the sound has grown on me and I really like it. I've made one modification that I've applied to both guitars, and that's a rest on the rest, so that the guitar's more comfortable to play if you're sitting down all day in a studio. On the nylon strung guitar, I've put a set of Alba string beads, which make it quicker for me to change the strings, but also allow me to lower the action that little bit more, because they increase the break angle across the saddle. Something else I've done, which is not really a modification, but it's just convenient, and that is to place in USB rechargeable batteries. And it just means I can have one set in the guitar and a spare set sitting in the case, so I can always keep one set charged. And that leads me on to the one minor criticism, or just personal preference, that I don't like about these guitars, and that is they don't give you much time to change batteries when the battery starts to go. Some way of knowing the battery level would be a really useful addition to this guitar, and in fact for me it would make it more or less the perfect guitar, and definitely the perfect guitar in its class. And this brings me on to another point, and that's the fact that in this class of guitar the competition is growing, and there's getting more and more better quality, cheaper guitars that do exactly the same job. So Yamaha need to do some more developing and see what they can do to make this guitar even better. And that's all I can say really. This is just a collection of observations and personal opinions. You might find you think completely differently to me, and that's fine. Something I've noticed in the comments is the look of these guitars is really polarizing. Some people really love the way they look, and some people absolutely hate the way they look. But at the end of the day, especially if you're a recording artist or just a guitarist who likes to record themselves, it's how they sound that's more important than how they look. And these do sound really excellent, and they've lasted the last 4 years, and they'll probably outlast me. So they're a really good guitar and they sound good. And that's it for today. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, you know what to do. Click the like button, and if you haven't done already, please do like, subscribe and hit the bell icon. And if you'd like to go through a professionally written guitar course completely free, you can go through the GCH Guitar Academy Fingerstyle Guitar Course Book 1 and Book 2, and you can find the playlists for those courses on my YouTube channel. And you can get the PDF ebooks of Book 1 and Book 2 of the Fingerstyle Guitar Course completely free at www.ebooks4guitar.com. Thanks again for watching.